Hello and welcome to episode 57. Wow, no. Just not even fancy enough to get it right. Just no. 57. All right.
Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello and welcome to episode 57 of Mythos Busters. I'm Sean. Joining me tonight are my pals Nick. Hey Nick.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm all right. What'd you have for lunch today?
Not a ham sandwich. That joke for nobody.
I got one out of Ian. I'll count it.
I actually had Costco pizza for lunch today.
Oh, not a bad choice.
It's okay.
Yeah. Joining us as well tonight is Ian. Hi, Ian.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I also had pizza for lunch today, but not Costco.
Yeah.
Oh.
What kind?
Probably had better pizza.
It was leftover Mountain Mike's. So
Mountain Mike's.
Mike's.
That's a brand I'm unfamiliar with, but am now intrigued by.
okay, must be a West Coast non-Midwest thing then. I have no idea.
Is that frozen or like a delivery or?
It's a delivery. Yeah.
Okay.
Think they delivered to Minnesota?
I'll
just take
Worst
it with
they
me
can
on
say
the
is no. And joining us as well, maybe tonight, he's here in like incorporeal spirit, is our buddy Scott. He's evidencing some pretty terrible router issues right now, so he might hop in if those all resolve themselves. All right, so tonight we've got a fun episode. We're going to do our normal catch-up, a little bit of news, a little bit of community, and then for our main topic tonight, we're actually revisiting a conversation we had pretty early in the life of the game. We're going to talk about the state of the game with a focus on upgrading your investigators for campaign mode and kind of where the game's at. And then, of course, we'll close it out with some tentacle time. Yeah, sound good, guys? I'll hop into it?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mountain Mike's does not deliver to Minnesota, by the way.
Oh, damn it.
I just
Well,
checked.
thank you for the follow-up. Nick, what have you been playing lately?
The little bit of Arkham that I've played is I've actually done a solo Joe Diamond campaign. Now that I have Circle undone, solo Joe Diamond through Circle and solo Carolyn through Circle. And I got to Death's Doorstep with Joe before I decided to just dismantle that campaign because I realized I had missed so many rules things, because my primary time to play Arkham is in the morning, after I drop my daughter off at school, and I have an hour where my son has his hour of screen time, so he's on the iPad or watching a cartoon or something, and I'm okay, I'll knock out some Arkham. But I tend to play it super fast because I only have an hour, so I don't read much for flavor text. I kind of just skim the rules, and then usually it ends up I get done with a scenario and I'm like, that felt way too easy, or that felt way too difficult. And then I go back and look, and sure enough, that's what my Joe Diamond run through Circle Undone was. It was my test run, essentially. It was my, testing the waters to see what the campaign was like. And I played it very poorly. So then, armed with that knowledge, I then started a solo Carolyn campaign, and playing correctly, and also playing in the evening as well when I found some time between rehearsals. I'm really enjoying it. This campaign is, I love this startup. It reminds me of Carcosa and how I felt the first few times I played, the first 2 or 3 scenarios of Carcosa. Mm-hmm. It's very, the intrigue and the mystery is really cool. I know that there was a lot of mystery with Forgotten Age and how do these different MP the story characters, what are their motives and everything, but it didn't feel as
Spectrum.
It didn't feel as gripping as Carcosa did, nor does it, and Circle Undone's the same way. It's very much I'm very excited to see what the narrative implications are going forward, especially because I don't want to give anything away, but there's a choice that I made as a player, just out of curiosity, because I was like, oh, there's no reason that I should look at the back of this card. What's over here? I flipped it over, and suddenly I have to add something to my campaign log, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
You're like, oh, Matt, you bastard.
Yeah, exactly.
Sly bastard.
So, yeah, I'm really enjoying Circle Undone, and Carolyn is doing well, ? She's doing well for the most part. The only times I really run into issues is when I'm like hit with 2 or 3, I would say 3 or 4 enemies at one time, where I have like 2 on me and then 1 that's a location away and that sort of thing. That's where she really starts to run into issues, and so I've learned to bring dynamite to like every scenario with her just in case. But otherwise, I'm really enjoying her solo, but I'm glad we're doing this discussion topic today, because I can see that she runs into some upgrade issues, ? So
I would agree that upgrading Carolyn is kind of a labyrinthine adventure. No, I'm sorry, a maze-like adventure.
Well, it's maze-like in that there's like 2 paths, and one of them is slightly longer than the other, but they're both pretty short.
And one's the exit.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Excellent. I'm just happy you have Circle Undone finally.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. And, we're not talking the scenarios tonight, so not to get too spoilery, but I kind of felt like the box felt very Stranger Things in a way. Okay, well, let's revisit when we can get into details.
It feels more of a ghost story than Stranger Things did, but sure. I can see what you're going for.
Mm-hmm. Ian, what hast thou been playing?
Well, I haven't been getting in as much Arkham the past 2 weeks as I normally would. I would like, just working on other stuff, but the main thing I've been doing is just catching up my campaigns through Secret Name. And then the latest one was Solo Rita, and she got absolutely rocked by Secret Name. It was like one of those ones where like halfway through I'm just like, okay, what kind of trauma am I going to get for this? And just trying to set up for that, because it's just one of those things, without getting too spoilerific on Secret Name. Certain scenarios just hard counter certain investigators, and there's not much you can do about it. I'm not too worried, because I experienced this last campaign with the 3rd scenario of that campaign, Threads of Fate, where my solo Finn just got destroyed by Threads of Fate. But then he ended up just like dominating the rest of the campaign, and was like one of the strongest runs. So hopefully that'll be how it will be for Solo Rita. But man, I think it's technically possible for Solo Rita to beat it. I'm sure if you teched specifically for it, you might have a chance, but I still think it's going to be a rough go no matter what.
I think Solo Rita in general is brave.
Yeah, how has she fared in the other scenarios, in the first 2? The
first 2, she was fine. Yeah, she did really well. She was able to kind of leverage her mobility. And she didn't finish the scenarios. Well, she didn't finish the first scenario as fast as some of my other gators, but she also didn't have as much trouble in some ways, if that makes sense. Like, it took her longer to get things done, mostly because of like the clue issues. Sure. She has to set up for that.
Yeah.
But she was kind of able to like bob and weave and stay out of danger while I was setting up. So the first 2 were fine. It was just the specific things that Secret Name does made it difficult for Rita. And if that happens again, I'm trying to figure out how to troubleshoot, like, because her best offensive weapon is obviously the bow.
Right.
But that takes up hand slots, and then in order to do her clue, I rely heavily on hand items for her cloovering, or not cloovering, but her getting any clues at all. So
her clue scrounging,
right? Yeah. So
her
I have
desperate scrapings. Sorry, I have no idea how Rita gets clues. I'm not trying to do that.
I have flashlight in there. I use those a lot. Gravedigger shovel is pretty key to get off the High Shroud's location, so all of those are taking up hand slots. So yeah, Yeah, I just need to do some thinking about, it's not like she has access to Bandolier or something, so
Right.
I just have to do some thinking about that if it comes up.
You're
again.
running Winging It, right?
Yeah, I have like stuff like Look What I Found and Winging It, but
And she can take tricks. Is that what her?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about how I feel about that deck building additive. Like tricks, cute.
Yeah, I will. I don't think this is spoiling too. Like, it's not spoiling any specific mechanic, but just Secret Name demands more from you in terms of
It's
gathering.
a bit of a hill.
In terms of gathering clues than almost any other scenario I can think of in the whole game. So, like, that's why in the first two scenarios, it's like, yeah, I have to get clues, but, like, I have a certain, like, finite amount of tools to get clues in my Rita deck. But if you're suddenly, like, I don't think it's doubling the demand, but it's, like, it's quite a bit more than usual clues, then all of a sudden, like, those finite clue tools feel finite. So, yeah.
They sure do. It requires some serious staying power on your clue gathering for sure.
Yeah.
I would say for my part, both of my notable games of the past couple of weeks were also of the Secret Name. So I wasn't able to get to play it until like the Saturday. Was it the Saturday after it released? I don't know. It was a few days. So I was like chomping at the bit to get to play it because normally like I grab it and like I throw it on the table the same night. But anyway, so I waited a few days and my friend Justin came over, and our current campaign is Preston and Diana, and I'm gonna just go ahead and say light spoiler for a single character that we've already talked about. If you're like super upset about spoilers, just go ahead and skip ahead about a minute. But anyway, so the first time we set up the scenario, and I'm sorry if anyone has already heard this because I did share this on social media, but this was just so perfect. So we set the thing up, we go through like the 20 minutes of, all right, we'll grab these sets. Okay, that's what's set aside. These locations are here. Just like the whole thing that goes with setting up a new Arkham scenario. Play out our first turn. And we get to Mythos, and sure enough, the first card that I pull off the Mythos phase, Brown Jenkins. Oh, BJ just hopped straight out of the encounter deck. Like I shuffled that thing, guys. Like Justin will verify that was like 2 riffles and 3 separate stack shuffles. That thing was actually shuffled, and the literal first possible second I could have played with Brown Jenkins on the board in this game, I did. So, so in other news, I'm squarely back in the camp of being terrified of Brown Jenkins because how does that happen? That encounter deck's not small either.
He's the anti-Jazz.
Sure is.
He's the lightest card in the deck.
And then I suppose beyond that, I've actually started up. I'm trying True Solo out again for this campaign. It's kind of a thing. But I found a Diana build that I really like for True Solo, and it's gone really well. She thrashed Witching Hour, did pretty all right in at Death's Door, and then when I got to Secret Name, oh man, it was just a knockdown fight with the encounter deck the entire time, and she just barely lost. Like one more action, I would have had it, and. Anyway, but it was a very glorious. It was a hero's death, so I accepted that resolution proudly. But yeah, anyway, I'm really, really excited for when we're probably next episode going to talk about TCU and beyond, because this campaign is knocking it out of the park so far.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
All right. So, moving on from there, let's just do a little bit of content catch up for the channel. We didn't get any Tuesday Night Arkham in since the last time we recorded. We actually were able to get a couple of AV Club episodes in instead. Brandon wasn't able to show up, so Scott hopped on, and we pounded out up to, I want to say, Depths of Yoth? We're pretty close. We're almost done with TFA. Yeah. So go check those out on YouTube if you haven't already. And they should be following up on the podcast feed for Miskatonic AV Club shortly. Ian, what's going on with Abandoned and Alone?
I finally got another one in after a bit of a break, and so took on the Paladin Mask with Solo Carolyn. Speaking of Solo Carolyn, and this time in a new form, I was streaming Tabletop Simulator this time instead of Octagon, which was a bit of a change, but I think it went pretty well, and people seem to be receptive to it, so I think I'm going to stay with that. But
Dude, that mod is so slick.
It is.
It's
like,
so slick.
Some of my main gripes, because I was a pretty diehard Octagon believer, but some of the things in Tabletop Simulator, I didn't like having to scroll around all the time, and just that particular mod has simplified a lot of things, so you don't gotta go scurrying around the board to do a lot of things like drawing chaos tokens and encounter cards. That's all right in front of you. So
I would say, as soon as you're not fumbling around with just the base controls of Tabletop Simulator, which you will do when you first start using it. But once you get past that, I would say the setup time is very close to Octagon for the same scenario.
Yeah. And Solo Carolyn, similar to Nick's experience, has gone better than I thought it was going to go since she picked up from Father Mateo. Granted, it's only been 2 scenarios, so not a big... And the Chaos Bag was a little bit gentler than usual in this last game. But it's been fun. Just figuring out the set of tools that Carolyn needs to handle enemies. So I encourage people to watch that latest run, because there's a few fun moments with some of the newer cards and using those with Carolyn. And
Excellent.
I got foolishness into play, so see how that happens and how that went.
Foolishness, you say?
Yep.
I mean, you got it into play, but was it useful?
You'll have to watch to find out. But
Oh, good answer.
Trixie Hobbits is... All right. So then, moving on from there, let's move on to patron business.
So thanks as always to everyone who supports us on Patreon. And thanks to our now 9 board members. We mentioned last time, I think it was just last episode, right? That we were gonna open up 4 slots, and those slots have filled. So thanks to our 3 Chris's, Chris B, Chris H, and Chris U. Thank you so much. Cyclos, Alex, Ian, Kyle, Philip, and Dave. Thank you, board members, for contributing so much and being generous to what we do. Special shout out to a random patron this time around is Ethan Chua. And for our couple of new board members, we do have some new job titles that we're rolling out for them. So for Chris Yu, since there are so many Chris's on our board now, we need someone to wrangle them. So Chris Yu is going to be the director of Chris's. a very important job. And Philip Travis is going to be the lead spoiler expunger. So all those pesky spoilers, he's going to be going through with a black pen and redacting it.
Yeah, we didn't know we were going to be getting into that business segment, but the market has just demanded it. We can't. we got to be nimble.
Yep. And the final bit of Patreon business is we've also, if you go and visit our Patreon page, we have rolled out some new goals. $200 was our musical episode, of course, but we now have some further goals we've added. So at $300, once we hit that amount, which we're about $20 away from, I believe, we are going to be producing something called Dissonant Voices. So did you want to quickly share what that is, Sean?
Sure can. So it's a thing we've been thinking about doing for a while, and I think a couple of other content producers have started in on the project. But the whole idea is we're just going to produce a series of YouTube videos and audio files, however people want to consume it, of just narrations for the campaign guides. So your prologues, your interludes, your scenario run up, basically anything that's printed, story text that's printed in the campaign guide. We're going to put some YouTube videos out there. We're going to throw some stock creepy music behind it. And the whole idea here, we're not going to try to overproduce it or anything. This isn't like radio drama that we're trying to produce. It's just supposed to be a nice little tool where if you want to sit down with a group or by yourself and kind of get into the story, you're not doing one of those runs where you just skip over all the story text. You can just flick this on in the background while you're setting the scenario up and enjoy. And hopefully it'll be a nice little tool for people who want to hear their story text rather than read it.
Mm-hmm. So once we hit $300 is our goal, we will start rolling out Dissonant Voices, and any patron at any level is going to get access to those recordings. So that's exciting. Looking forward to those. A little further
I'm halfway through the TCU box.
Nice. There's a lot of text there.
And I'm like, God, why did I pick this box? I'm so stupid. It's a lot of text. So.
Yeah, I feel like this amount of story text has increased over time, which not complaining because I like it, but
no, it's cool story text. So
for these
it's easy to get into.
Yeah. A little further down the road, we have some more goals that we're looking at. So at the $400 level, we're going to look to open up our very own Mythos Busters merch store where people can get their hands on various Mythos Busters swag. At the $500 level, this is an interesting one. One of the Mythos Busters hosts, I don't know if we specified exact number, but I think it's at least one Mythos Busters host will get a Mythos Busters tattoo.
An Arkham tattoo.
Oh, Arkham tattoo, sorry. Yes. An Arkham related tattoo.
I think didn't we say we're going to Rochambeau at Gen Con?
Yeah, I think pretty much Nick and Scott have X'd themselves out, so it's between me and you, Sean. So... yeah, so we'll have some way of deciding that. Yeah, that's at a $500 level, so that's a ways down the road. We'll see if we get there. Of course, I'd love to get there, but we'll see. And the final goal is $600. This is ambitious in a completely different way. We will host our very own Mythos Busters mini convention. TBD, obviously that's a very ambitious goal. Who knows, we'll get there, so there's no details on where it will be and all that, but if we start getting close,
if we get past $500, then we'll start coming up with some details.
Yep, then we'll give that information to you. Let's see, what am I forgetting? This is an important one. The other bit of Patreon business is we did open our own Patreon channel on our Discord server, so everyone who's a patron can message one of us to get access to that on the server, and basically that's a good place for patrons to communicate with us directly about like patron stuff, like suggesting rules, asking questions for us to answer, all that good stuff.
Speaking of, after we finish with patrons, let me remind you guys what the rule we're playing with tonight is going to be.
Oh, right.
I probably should have led with that because you guys got off easy getting through the recent Play Stores without having to do it. And the other thing I just kind of want to bring up, like I hope that we don't come off as too salesy with this with our patron stuff, because really what we're trying to do, the podcast will always be free. We'll never ever compromise on that. We want anyone to be able to listen to it. We're also just trying to kind of add value to various parts of the community. I think it's kind of more important for a cooperative card game to have community touch points, whether they be podcasts or their content producers, or that dude at your store who bothers to put in the time to put your meetups together or throw your meetups together, that sort of thing. It's just so much more important for a co-op game because there's no competitive scene. So we just try to add value to that, and at the end of the day, we've got some cool stuff planned for our patrons. So if you feel like hopping in, great. But if you don't, no worries. We still want you.
Agreed.
All right. So moving on from there, guys. Tonight, the rule that we will be playing with, and this one's going to be particularly fun for. I just realized for the topic we picked. So whenever the rule tonight is, and for anyone who is unaware of what I'm talking about, last episode we played a little game, which I happened to win, and thus I get to set a special behavioral rule for tonight. And that rule is, whenever you refer to an investigator, you can't use that investigator's name first. You must say how they are different from Diana Stanley. Like, for instance, For instance, if I want to refer to one Rex Murphy, I would say the not Diana Stanley who gets clues quickly.
Okay. Yeah, this should be interesting for the topic.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so moving on. Nick, what do we got going on in the community?
I know that we talked about the Twisted Tentacle Inn previously, I think on one of our earlier shows, but I wanted to highlight that channel, that YouTube channel again, simply because he recently put up a video about top 10 solo strategy tips, which I thought was pretty insightful. There's a few things there that I kind of was like, oh, I do those when I play solo. And then there were a couple other things that I was like, oh, I should do those when I play solo. So I think there's interesting tidbits for anybody, whether you play solo a lot or whether you're like Sean and it's something that you kind of come back to but still prefer two-handed. Things he talks about are stuff like don't worry about killing every enemy, or plan when you're going to advance the act if that's something you have control over. Stuff like that. I don't want to obviously go over everything, but I want to make sure that that people check out that video because there's a lot of good tips in there as far as how to handle solo play.
I feel like I could learn a lot from watching that. Excellent. And in addition, be sure, I know we mentioned it last episode, but check out Innkeeper is also part of the Great Old Ones cast, and they put out their second episode. So check those guys out if you hadn't. Ian.
Yes?
We have some news.
Yeah, we do, yes. So in the meantime, since our last episode, the 6th and final Mythos pack in the Circle Undone cycle has been announced, which is Before the Black Throne. And we got the accompanying news article. Since this is kind of the final pack, I'm not really going to go into the story or mechanics much for those players who like to avoid that kind of stuff and go in blind, because I think it is kind of revealing of how this cycle will end. So I will skip over that. But I will say the mechanic of the scenario looks pretty cool, and it looks like a blend of some other mechanics that I have liked in the past in other scenarios. So
also, the agenda is called Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah.
Just wanted to point that out.
It's funny.
You just set aside Arkham Horror and you just play a game of Wheel of Fortune instead. That's how it ends. But as far as player cards, this is very cool. There's a new type, a new keyword involved in player cards, the bonded keyword. And what this does is it links player cards together. And there's one example given. I'm not sure if they will all work this way. But basically when you play one of them, then it kind of summons the other cards that are linked to them, that are bonded to them. So I think this is something really cool that I was hoping would happen in the game, where you kind of get a set of cards that are like thematically, mechanically linked. So the first one is Occult. These ones are kind of combined together, but Occult Lexicon. Nick, why don't you read this one?
Sure thing. Occult Lexicon is a seeker asset. It has a resource cost of 2. It's level 0. It has 1 intellect skill icon. It has the item, tome, and occult traits. And its game text reads, limit to 1 per deck. Forced. After Occult Lexicon enters play, search your bonded cards for 3 copies of Blood Right. Add 1 to your hand, and shuffle the other 2 into your deck. When Occult Lexicon leaves play, find each of those copies of Blood Right, even if they are out of play, and remove them from the game. It takes up 1 hand slot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just sorry for whoever tripped and spilled their jelly all over the desk.
Yeah, one important note is that these bonded cards kind of are set aside in a separate selection of bonded cards that don't take up space in your deck. So you'll still have your deck size without these. So I'll read Blood Right. So Blood Right is a spell. It's a 0-cost event. Will, intellect, and combat icons. Bonded to the Occult Lexicon. So this is one of the cards that Occult Lexicon will grab. Draw 2 cards. Discard up to 2 cards from your hand. For each card thusly discarded, you may either gain 1 resource or spend 1 resource to deal 1 damage to an enemy at your location. This action does not provoke attacks of opportunity. Interesting. So when you play the Lexicon, you get 1 of these in hand. The other 2 blood rights get shuffled into your deck.
So I'd just like to point out the crime that is giving us another tome without an action for Daisy to leverage.
Yeah.
That said, this is a really cool mechanic. This reminds me of like things you would do in like a digital card game where like a card would explode into 2 other cards. Or like become another card randomly or something like that. Like, I love this sort of thing. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say, and this is really kind of a lame thing to say to bring up here, but the first thing that came to mind was I have a very precise way that I sort my cards, and this fucks it up. Because I'm going to have to sort Blood right behind Occult Lexicon now, because you can't play without it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely you are.
But Blood right is a cost 0 card, and Occult Lexicon is cost 2. So everything behind Occult Lexicon should either be cost 2, that's later in the alphabet, or cost 3.
You know, if there's one thing I've learned is that Matt's distaste for convention just fucks with codified systems really hard.
It's worked so like the
Very
multi-class cards threw me for a loop at first, but I figured out how to do it, and now this one's just like, nope. I should just throw them all in a box and not organize them. Got it.
I have a suggestion for you, Nick. For organization.
Hi, Scott.
Oh, hi. I think I have a solution to my network issues. But anyways, when I saw this, I thought, you know what? I'm going to make a separate section in my storage area for bonded cards. So I would put Occult Lexicon where it should be. So in the Seeker level 0 asset area. And then just have like a box over there or an area that's just bonded cards. And it's not divided by class or whatever. It's just all the bonded cards.
Yeah, but
like,
I think
for multi-class, I just said multi-class, and I just put them all in one area.
Sure. Well, yeah, I think like it's kind of because you can't take Occult Lexicon without Blood right. And reading Occult Lexicon, it literally does nothing other than give you Blood right. So it kind of feels like Lexicon is the dead card, despite the fact that it is the natural card, you know, so to speak. So we're spending too much time talking about organization. I like Blood right. I think it's really interesting. I like that it comes off of a level 0 asset because it's not, I don't think it's overpowered. It's nice that it draws you 2 cards and then you get to choose among your full hand then at that point what you want to discard. And it gives you a choice as to what you get back for discarding. So it's nice utility. But I don't know if it's something that I would be very interested to see how else they use this keyword beyond just this.
It's a cool effect because you could do lots of different things with bonded. They could hop into play, like they could, you know, hop into play.
Right.
Perhaps they could just like come into play.
Ooh, you know what? This is a thing they could use for Ian and Scott and maybe Nick if you saw it. You remember in Lord of the Rings, in the later game, there were player cards that would let you shuffle allies into the encounter deck so that when you drew them during the encounter phase, like they hopped into play and now you got an ally.
Yep. Sure they do.
That sort of thing could be done here.
I do have a rules question because so it says search your bonded cards for 3 copies and stuff. And then it says when it leaves play, find each of those copies and remove them from the game. What if you were to like scavenge Occult Lexicon back and have it enter play again? Are those cards still bonded or are they removed from the game?
I mean,
well,
the intent has to be bonded, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's on the card, so I would think it is always bonded, right?
But I know intent is not always what's written.
Yeah, I don't know. Questions.
All right, well, I expect a follow-up rules PSA on that one when you find the answer.
I'll get back to you in 6 months.
Okay.
The third player card spoiled is kind of fitting because it is an upgrade version of a card that we had the pleasure of spoiling. So, Sean, why don't you read Upgraded 6 cents?
Boy, aren't we glad we hopped on that one quickly.
Yeah.
Because we got the spoiler, and then, less than a week later, this article came out. And, I'm sure no malice or ill intent involved. Like, it's hard to coordinate, but this totally would have spoiled our spoiler. All right, anyway. So, level 4 Sixth Sense is a mystic asset. It still costs 3. It has 2 intellect icons. It's still a spell. Action, investigate. Investigate using willpower instead of intellect. You get +2 willpower for this investigation. If a Skull Cultist tablet or Elder Thing symbol is revealed during this test, you may choose a revealed location up to 2 connections away from your location. You are now investigating as if you were at the chosen location in addition to your location. You may use either Shroud value. And it takes up an arcane slot. So, I don't know if you guys did this the first time you read it. I missed the very important word there. In addition to, I thought for 4 experience you get a little bit of a willpower bump and you get a farther, a farther reach. I'm like, well, that's cool, but it's not a 4 experience cool. But in addition to is 4 experience cool. Can confirm.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, that is really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So now I have a even bigger rules question. Eldritch Inspiration. Can you now choose 2 other locations and investigate at those 2 in addition to the one you're at? Because that's how I'm kind of reading this right now.
That would be my interpretation, and that it's doing things to me that I'm not terribly comfortable sharing.
I would think it would give you a 3rd location.
Yeah, that's how it seems. Because it's just adding on to it.
And using
and
any of the
big
shrouds.
Rules guy, our big rule guy in the chat, Mr. BD Flory, is like, yeah, looks fine. So I trust his judgment.
Damn! All right, that's worth 4 XP. We might have finally found a card worth running Eldritch Inspiration. Because I love the idea of it, but it still has yet to make its way into any decks. Even Diana.
You mean you don't run Eldritch Inspiration in your Song of Dead gym build? That was a joke.
Well,
Please laugh at that. It's absurd.
Now I want to, is the thing.
I tried making Song of the Dead work with Jim, and I just couldn't.
Dark Prophecy would help, but it's still ropey.
Yeah, exactly. It was hard to get both, get that in play and have a position to use it and have Dark Prophecy in hand. The amount of times that those wires crossed was not as often as I would have hoped. Mm-hmm. When you have Shriveling, that just literally does Shriveling, and it's great. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so meat
jumping
and
through
potatoes.
hoops. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like this one will probably be just because of, the way solo play works. This is probably maybe one you don't look at it in solo, unless it's...
No, this is almost exclusively a multiplayer card.
Yeah. Unless it's, hard or expert and you really need to get... Yeah, just because I think in solo, how many times are you going to have, a revealed location 2 connections away that you didn't already grab clues from?
I've noticed more in Circle Undone than I have in previous campaigns, but even still, that number tends to be fairly low.
That's valid. And
also, there's certain locations in TFA where it's I don't want to investigate there, or I can't investigate there, Securitas Trail or whatever, right? Just as an example,
right?
You go to a location, you're whatever I do, I don't want to be here, and you leave. Or there's an enemy there and you've evaded them, and then next turn they're sitting there, they're not hunter, but you don't want to go there and deal with them again.
Yeah.
I still think this has quite a bit of weight in solo.
It also kind of softens the blow a little bit just a little bit from encounter effects that force you to put a clue back on your location. Because if you're all right, I'm going to get all the clues and then move, and then you draw an enemy, and then something forces you to put the clue back on the location. You're like, well, I still got to get out of here,
right.
Or whatever. So that's a very niche example, but
well, I mean, yeah, it's It's so situational. The problem I have with it is that that extra effect is really freaking cool. But you know when you're sitting at a location and your intent is to clear this other location, you are never gonna find a bad stuff token when you want it.
That's true.
I mean, Dark Prophecy exists, but
I would say even with all of the token control that we have, it's still. I will say that level 4 Sixth Sense feels like it fits a little less in solo Mystic than level 0.
Yes,
but I think that you could. I think in this campaign specifically, you could find a home for it.
Well, one downside though, no, looking at this is if you're investigating as if you are at both locations, then does that mean both haunted will trigger if you fail?
It would, I would think.
That would hurt. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty Mystic. High risk, high reward, right?
And if that's the way it is, then that my whole thing about, not wanting to investigate somewhere else, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, what if you're using this to investigate the Orn Library? Do you have to play an additional action then?
Because
I think you would.
If you were at... you don't avoid all those. Yeah.
Yeah. It is a May ability, but still, it's...
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not crazy broken.
If you want to trigger it, you gotta do it mostly honestly.
You gotta pay the troll toll.
You want to do the crime, you gotta pay the time, right?
That's right.
Okay. Yeah, I believe that does it for Before the Black Throne.
Wonderful. We'll expect the return to the Forgotten Age, or the Remembered Age announcement article. No, wait, hang on. We got Carcosa.
We still need Carcosa, which I am.
I'm like a damn year ahead.
Yeah, because I love Carcosa, so I want to see what they do to that.
Return to Path of Carcosa. There we go. All right, Scott. Surely some rules have cropped up in the interim.
None whatsoever. However, I realized listening to our last episode, when I gave the example of the multi-class cards about, if they have the word other in them, turns out Finn has other in his deck building rules. So basically, I went through and I checked online and stuff. Basically, the only person that gets boned by this currently is Norman.
God. And he's tricky enough to upgrade
He was
anyway.
overpowered.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone else, it basically works the way you want it, where it goes into the bigger pool of cards that they have, if that makes sense. So as long as it matches a class from that bigger pool.
So really the only effect right now is Scroll of Secrets would count as one of the 5 level 0 Mystic cards.
Yes.
I'm kind of super okay with that. It's
much.
It's what I would categorize as a non-issue.
Does anybody play Norman anymore?
I have.
I don't. Because every time I do, I'm like, there's better Mystics. like standalone Norman is great, but campaign Norman is like, ugh.
I would agree he's definitely trickier. Like, maneuvering around his upgrade rules is a bit of a dance.
Keep in mind, I say that as a Carolyn player, so I'm a little hypocritical.
Right. But the really cool thing about Norman is that he's a mystic who can just go from word 1 in investigating. And that...
Right.
Like, you even see how good Maria is at 4. Like, it just works.
Don't you guys mean the not Diana Stanley with a beard?
Oh my god, you failed so badly at that.
Yeah, this is
already. This is very poor. Holy shit.
Yes, the one that's not Diana Stanley with the beard. That's indeed what I meant.
Oh my god, how many investigators do we name?
Oh boy. Oh, I know I did at least the non-Diana Stanley who loves books, so I'll correct that one.
Nice.
Wow.
Okay. Well, we'll catch it from here on out.
Yeah, right.
Will we?
Yeah,
probably not. Okay, so then let's move into our main discussion topic. So, Scott, since you brought this one to us tonight, I would love it if you would start us off.
Absolutely. So this was a topic that was actually suggested to me a few months ago by one of our board members from Patreon, Alex. And his big topic he wanted us to kind of tackle was upgrading, but specifically when and how to upgrade into the quote-unquote big cards. And then on top of that, or more importantly, when to use those big cards. And the one he kind of uses as an example was the Golden Pocket Watch. So that's a card you get down, and then, you know, every turn there's always that question, when am I going to pop this, right? And so the strategy behind when to put these big cards into your deck, and then also during a game when to use them, how soon should you upgrade into them, etc. So yeah, and I think we're going to look at it from different classes and different roles, and even different those who aren't Diana Stanley investigators. So
yeah, so kind of talking on the base level though, just like a quick rundown of where everyone feels like the metagame is at for upgrading. Do you guys have a specific strategy you generally take? Because I feel like I'm a hodgepodge. Like, my strategy is generally some mix of maybe something I planned to upgrade into at level 0 because it's a good card, new cards that came out and I just want to try, and lastly, the little impulse buys when I have 1 or 2 experience left and can't make myself save it, so I have to spend it on something, and I'm like, oh, hey, well, Banish is 1 XP, let's throw it in. Does anyone else have more strategy than I do? God, I hope.
I think if I'm playing Seeker, my first strategy is to get higher ed,
Sure.
and then everything else after that is just whatever.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
I don't know if I have like some well thought out like logical progression other than there's a set of core cards for each investigator that I kind of have in mind. So higher ed would be an example, streetwise for rogues would be an example. And then I think in general I tend to like try to grab like the lower XP, higher utility sweet spot cards first. And I don't generally tend to grab the big bombs right away. That's usually more of like a kind of mid-campaign type thing for me. Again, dependent on an investigator. Like if I'm a guardian, then I'm probably trying to get those big guns earlier.
So let's talk for a quick second and come to a mutual description of what a big bomb is. How big does it have to be?
I think to me a big bomb is like we're looking at like 4 to 5.
Yep.
Or in the case of Rogue, 6 XP.
Agreed.
You know, it's the ones where you're like, you spend a whole scenario's XP on one card for your deck. Or something about that. Instead of taking, you know, a couple luckies, a magnifying glass, you know, a bunch of smaller purchases.
Okay. Nick, did you want to weigh in on general strategy? Or are you just flying by the seat of your pants like the rest of us?
Well, I very much go based off of how the campaign is going. And, like, after 2 scenarios, I kind of go like, okay, I've struggled in this department, and I'm doing well in this department, so what can I get to help shore up my weaknesses? You know, what can I do to make my deck more efficient? And when it comes to bomb cards, I mean, I play a lot of Guardian, so this, like, stick to the plan is always hovering right at the edge of my vision. And I'm always like, I could get stick to the plan, or I could get double vicious blows and, you know, a well prepared, or double vicious blows and then double, you know, whatever a one experience drop would be or whatever. So stick to the plan is one of those that's like, I love it because it makes my deck smaller. And it also gives me access to cards that are probably really important at specific times. It adds value to cards that otherwise lack that value because it's like, well, I don't have it when I need it. Problem is, not every time I run a Guardian do they have, you know, cards that I would consider be value added on Stick to the Plan. So I have to think about that as well. But that's usually my go-to bomb card for early campaigns. Like by the end of Scenario 2, if I've decided I'm taking it, I take it. Like, if I have the experience for it, I grab it early, because then in my head, that's going to increase my efficiency. Now, of course, that takes the whole when do you use it out of the equation, because you always use Stick to the Plan, because it's amazing.
Yeah.
But as far as other classes go, yeah, I very much just go like, what am I having trouble with? will these problems be solved with lower experience cards or higher? Like, it's very rare, unless I'm building a standalone deck, it's very rare that I go, this deck is going to upgrade into Golden Pocket Watch, or this deck is going to upgrade into Key of Yi. Well, they pretty much all can upgrade into Key of Yis, but you know what I mean. Like, unless I'm doing standalone, I don't really plan that. I just base it off of how the campaign is heading.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because it's actually one of the few times that I actually have a plan for upgrades is when I have made a prior standalone deck and then have backed it up to level 0 to play through a campaign. That's like the one time where I'm like, all right, I know the path. Like, I just buy these things as I can get them.
See, and I guess I see it very, like, I don't see it that way. I don't see, like, when I say I'm building a standalone deck, to me, that's a deck that's made to function standalone. And in my head, it's like, well, you know, I always go 49 experience. So the idea of expecting to get that, especially on my blind run through a campaign, that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not going to be the case. I guess I just approach, like, the campaign as more of, like, a story, and, like, how is my investigator evolving throughout the course of that, but also how am I meeting the mechanical needs that this campaign is demanding from me. Whereas my standalones are like, I'm going to build a deck that only uses shotgun, or I'm going to build a deck that doesn't have any assets in it, or whatever. And then just watch my teammates' eyes roll.
Build a deck with some other random deficiency.
Exactly.
Yeah, one question I've been thinking about lately that I'll throw out there for you guys is, how often do you find yourself taking into account the next scenario you're playing and kind of teching your upgrades specifically for that? I don't know if it's the LOTR player in me, but I didn't think about it much before, but now that I've started taking notice of it, I feel like I do that fairly often. Again, it might depend on investigator, but doing it in Abandoned and Alone too with, like, Solo Carolyn, like, I feel like it weighs...
Solo who, sorry?
What was that?
Solo who?
Solo Solo the not Diana who gets people to talk to her.
Jeez.
She, like, I feel like a lot of my upgrade decisions have been, okay, this, for example, this next scenario is going to take place with a huge map, so I'm going to take Banish because I need help with enemies, and I'm going to, like, send them across. But I feel like in general, like, when I was upgrading Rita, going into Secret Name, I was like, okay, I know I have to do these specific things. I'm going to choose this upgrade now instead of this one.
Right.
I find I do that a lot more now than I used to, where, and I think it really showed its head when we played Iron Man this year, and I had the not Diana Stanley that pulls things back from his graveyard quite often, Yorick. I had a plan for a few scenarios where I'm like, I want this upgrade. I wanted police badges before we went into the asylum, just because I know it's action intensive, and I want a way to get out of there if need be, right? Like, just chuck it for 2 more actions to be able to resign. And now I find myself, every time I'm going into a scenario that I've played many times, I'm like, what are always, like, what does the scenario throw at you that other scenarios don't? Or what is the scenario pushing on you that I could maybe upgrade into a card to negate those issues?
Yeah, are there any, like, gates that you have to pass to, you know, clear this scenario? I think any of the ones that really require a lot of parlay, I think I look at it a little bit more, and the ones that require a lot of mobility, that's when I'm like, you know what? I'll throw an XP in to have another astral travel, I guess. I would say it happens more now than before, and more so as I learn the campaigns. That's pretty much the simplest way.
Yeah.
So let's jump into a class here. I think the easiest one is Guardians, especially because they're also the first class. And everyone thinks of Guardians, usually thinks of big guns, I would say. So you got the shotgun, the bar, the lightning gun, and the flamethrower.
And the Springfield.
The shotgun, the bar, the lightning gun, and the flamethrower.
I'm sorry, there was just white noise, Nick.
I'm sorry, the not Diana Stanley, that's a terrible weapon.
So, I mean, it feels weird to me to buy these guns early in a campaign. Am I wrong in feeling that?
No.
I think the only time I would disagree with you is if I'm specifically doing something like a lightning gun build. Like if I'm running not Diana Stanley Who Talks to God, maybe I'll buy a big weapon first if I'm running sleight of hand as well, but most of the time...
Yeah. You know what's a more, like, I would argue a better purchase for early to mid-campaign Guardian than one of those big guns, in most cases, would probably be I've Had Worse.
Oh, yeah.
Or Stick to the Plan. I mean, I already talked about Stick to the Plan, so I wasn't going to go back to that, but I've Had Worse. We don't see it... You don't see it as much now, but Guardian still has resource issues outside of a couple of fixes.
Oh yeah.
And I've Had Worse is one of the best ways to get around that, because it's doing two things at once, and it's two things that Guardian needs, which is soaking horror and damage and giving you resources. So I think that getting that card earlier in a campaign for a Guardian player is probably a smart choice.
I would tend to agree. The enemies don't get... it depends on the campaign, I suppose, but the enemies don't seem to get consistently bad enough that, like, I really want the bomb weapon early. So I feel like, you'll get way more efficiency out of... I mean, I love I've Had Worse. I think that's a cornerstone Guardian card.
Yes.
For me, I feel like a lot of my early Guardian XP goes into allies, and it depends on who they have access to. But because of the core of what Guardian does is pretty solid to start off with before you even get into weapons, so I think I tend to think more about shoring up the weaknesses, like the horror soaks, and so I dip into allies for that. The exception is one, depending on Investigator, one, it's not a big gun, but it's a high XP weapon that I might take early, is if I'm going into like my Time Worn Brand Zoe build. I'll get Time Worn Brand pretty early because
You mean Time Worn Brand, not Diana Stanley Who Talks to God build?
Not Diana Stanley Who Hears Voices from Above, yeah. So, yeah, for her specifically, then because I feel like I'm spending a ton of XP on the brand. I want to get my scenarios worth. Yeah. And unlike the big guns where it feels like they feel like overkill when you're like unloading a bar on some 2 HP, like the Time Worn Brand is going to be useful from always, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think most of my upgrades in Guardian, I would say in general, are in the 2 to 3 experience area.
Yeah, there's a lot in 2 to 3 that Guardians really like.
Although I will say, like, mid-campaign, maybe sooner, I start looking at Stick to the Plan pretty hard. Stick to the Plan and, like, a singleton copy of Ever Vigilant.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's another thing, too, is Ever Vigilant is, like, if you get Stick to the Plan,
that's
you
like
get
your
Ever
7th
Vigilant
XP.
as soon as you can. Exactly. Yeah. Like, they're a bonded pair as far as I'm concerned.
I think the thing about Stick to the Plan, too, especially buying it early... one, you get more uses out of it, right? You just get more scenarios with it. But two, I think it makes your starts better almost every time, right? Because you have well prepared. You also have maybe emergency cache on there, depending which, right? Or you turn one of your emergency caches into a well prepared, and it, you get that economy going.
You mean prepared for the worst?
Yeah, sorry, prepared for the worst, not well prepared. Yeah, and it allows you a way better start, and I think starts are very important. And that allows you to possibly get a leg up, get more experience, and start this ball rolling towards a bigger, better deck with more XP. You know what I mean? Like, I think Stick to the Plan pays for itself in value of XP by allowing you to succeed more and get more XP in the future. It's like an investment.
I mean, it's drawing you 3 cards that you specifically want, holding them for you where they're protected from any hand discard effects. You play one of them. Like, it's... I don't know how you convert that to clicks, but...
Yeah, literally the only downside is you can only play one a turn, but still. Like, who cares?
Yeah, but I think like every time I've played it, I'm always like, okay, this is my first turn card, this is my second turn card, and this card is for later on in the game when I'm set up.
And this is Dynamite
and
Blast, so we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like
Sure,
my solo Carolyn, I have Ever Vigilant, Dodge, and Dynamite all in there. So, and they've worked for the one scenario I've had them. So,
I mean, essentially, to me, what it says is your starting hand is one bigger, and you can choose one of the cards, which is a great power. So,
Seeker?
that's another class. Yeah.
Higher ed.
Yes.
As soon as possible.
Higher ed.
Would we call that a bomb card?
yes,
I mean,
I think so.
Not in terms of
is it a
XP,
bomb card or?
but-
Right. Yeah.
it's not a big bomb, but it lays a big blast.
It's more,
The mind reels.
it's more like a carpet bomb. You know, it's a bunch of little bombs in a big long path.
It feels more like a foundation for the corner of the house that didn't have a foundation yet.
No, it's the machine
me.
gun emplacement. You just feed resources into it, and it's ba 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 right at the clues all day.
Okay. What else
So
we
instead
got?
of one big boom, it's a bunch of small poos. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, we should have ended like 2 metaphors ago.
No, this is great.
Okay. So aside from higher ed, Mag Glass is always pretty popular early if someone's running
Is that
it.
a bomb card?
Or are we just talking about bombs?
I thought that was the focus.
okay.
I think the concentration's on bombs.
All right.
Like, so for me, is like the side quests are the big bombs.
Sure.
In Seeker, like the strange solutions, stones, and glyphs. I know, like when I get the strange solution solved or whatever, identified. I'm like, wow, I feel this urge to immediately upgrade it to what I want. But sometimes I think that's the wrong decision, and it feels really weird to keep a identified strange solution in my deck just so I can get the mag glasses and the deductions. Thoughts?
Makes sense.
I mean, I've already said that I don't play with the side quest cards, but I can get where you're coming from.
I feel like in general, I tend to take the Seeker bomb cards, those side quest cards, earlier than I might in other classes. But I think that's just a reflection of... I feel like Seeker might be the class that I stress the least about my upgrades. Just because I get my higher ed and everything pretty much falls together. I think the deductions I will maybe prioritize over upgrading. But again, it depends on player count. Usually I'm playing Seeker, like, paired up with some fighter, so I don't really need to worry about bringing in some bomb card to deal with enemies. If I'm going solo, then I'll probably hit that strange solution, like Scenario 2 if I can, or Scenario 3, you know, because you really need it. But
What about narcotic manuscripts?
To say I've only ever used it in standalone. That's one...
I mean, it's pretty big choosing
It's-
to not draw chaos tokens.
I would categorize it squarely as a bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That said, it's 5 cost and 5 XP for 3 secrets.
Right. For 3 uses, yeah. Which there are ways to get more secrets on there, but unless the rest of your deck is already, built to do that, there's really no reason to pick those up as well. You know what I mean? Like, it seemed you'd be restructuring a lot of your deck just for that one card. But, damn! 3 times you don't have to draw... It's one that when I read it, I loved it, but then I ended up never actually playing it.
It's just so expensive.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is
Yeah.
it just asks a decent amount of you in the form of resources and XP.
I think if it had, 4 secrets on it, that would feel a little better. I don't know.
Another bomb that I would point out, and maybe it's just because I play a lot of multiplayer, but I love Deciphered Reality. That's one where I get mid to late campaign, and I'm looking at that one real hard in a dedicated clue gatherer.
Yeah. Deciphered Reality is great.
But yeah, I would agree. Like, I'm looking through the card list right now. Like, Seeker just doesn't have many bombs. Turns out they're just kind of good at the game at like level 2.
Yeah.
And you know what? Their bombs, I think, are just, and this kind of speaks to higher ed, and it feels like a theme I felt among Seekers and making these lists, that they don't have a lot of big bombs. They just have just a slew of really good, efficient cards.
Yes.
Right? Like Pathfinder, or like upgraded shortcut. You have Disc of Insomnia for enemy management, deduction for clue compression. You've got Mag Glass, just makes it better. Like it just, all these little things, like higher ed just makes you a little bit better, or a lot better. But it's just building on efficiencies, and it's just this trickling of bettering your deck. And I find it's like near the end, like if I'm not running one of the side quests, near the end of the game or the campaign, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to get the Deciphered Reality. Now I'm going to get the leveled up No Stone Unturned because combos, question mark. Yeah. They don't seem like a bomb class to me.
No. They don't rely on it as much, or it's just because they're super efficient at levels even 0, like 0 through 3. They're just super good. They're reliable.
Man, I suppose No Stone Unturned 5 is that's a heck of a thing. I always forget that that's fast. Fast is so
Right?
good.
Yeah.
Fast. Grab a card.
Fast.
Any card.
Turn this card into a different card.
Yep.
What about Cryptic Research? That's one that I don't think I've ever purchased.
I've taken it. It's becoming less common for me, I'd say, nowadays, especially now because we have level 2 preposterous sketches.
Prep sketches, yeah.
Like, it's definitely more efficient, but I don't know that it's 2 XP more efficient.
Sure.
Yeah. Like, would I rather have 1 Cryptic Research or 2 upgraded prep sketches?
Right.
But I would say in multiplayer, it's definitely better because you can give it to someone else.
Yeah, it's fast
Sure.
and you can trade it, yeah.
Or you can be greedy like me and just still keep it. Sorry, I earned this. You can draw your cards.
It can be hard
Or
to
you
talk
just play
yourself into it
Rex.
sometimes. You're like, oh, well, I brought this one for me.
I was saying you just play Rex, who has a built-in Cryptic Research on his Elder Sign.
Every time you look at that Elder Sign going like, oh, do I?
Last test of the game, the one you need to win. And you're like,
But
But
3
I
cards
could
is
draw.
nice.
yeah. So moving on to Rogue, and I think this is when Alex suggested this. I think Rogue was the class with, like, going through this list, I was like, wow, they have a few big bomb cards that are also like a one-time fire.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where the strategy of, okay, you buy this card, and then also in the game, when to use it. So let's start with the obvious one, Gold Pocket Watch. When do you upgrade into this? Do you think early so you get it more often, or later?
I would like to do it earlier, but the exceptional makes it. The 8 XP is just... Like, you are sacrificing so much in a class that's already XP hungry to get like the things you want to get, like Streetwise and lockpicks and all these other cards that may, like, as a rogue aficionado, I say this with love, but putting a positive spin on it, I think rogues benefit the most from upgrading more than any other class. I know that's a controversial.
I'd agree.
I think that's a controversial statement, maybe, but like,
I would agree.
I think
Yeah, I mean, rogues are absolute shit at level 0. I absolutely agree.
There it is.
I won't go that far, but I will say, like,
I know, I'm
the
joking.
gap between their level 0 and their XP cards is bigger than some of the other classes, I think.
Yeah.
And so what happens if you take Gold Pocket Watch early is that you're sacrificing that growth for a one-time effect, as good as it is. So
And it's a lot of growth that you're giving out.
yes,
8 experience can go a long way in Rogue.
it's huge.
Yeah, that's 2 Lolas and 2 lockpicks.
Well, and,
Like,
and specifically with a card like that, and you could say this about the big weapons too, like, it doesn't do you a whole lot of good to have the big bombs if the rest of your deck is not fully functional
Right.
yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Right.
sure, go ahead and have another investigate phase where you fail 3 times because you didn't get your intellect boost out yet. Like, okay. I feel like this is I don't want to call it win more because whatever, but it's more like you have to already have your momentum going and then this helps you.
I have never considered Golden Pocket Watch for a campaign. Never considered it. Because sometimes that's 2 scenarios worth of experience.
That's a big ask.
And yeah, but for standalone, I love it.
Oh, great in standalone, yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you who I've gotten the most value out of this is not a rogue. It's the not Diana Stanley who raids tombs, Ursula, is because what we just talked about, I don't feel a ton of XP pressure on her to be good. I took Gold Pocket Watch. It wasn't incredibly early in Forgotten Age, but maybe around... No, I'll tell you when it was. It was just before Boundary Beyond, because I said, if there's a scenario where I'm going to need the freaking Gold Pocket Watch, it's going to be Boundary Beyond. And it did save my butt. So...
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so...
And you can play Ellie, right? Because it's a relic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Surely can.
Yeah, so you essentially have 1 copy plus 2 half copies, kind of, in your deck, right? Like, Ellie can possibly find it for you. Because I think the big thing with it being exceptional is you're not always guaranteed to get it during a game, but Ursula's got a great way to search for it.
For sure.
Just kind of built into a general build of herself.
As does every Seeker.
Yeah. I mean, but
Ursula to a greater extent, for sure.
Yeah, because you can, So I have a question on this, though, because this was the big thing, is, so Golden Pocket Watch, you have it in your hand or you have it in play. When are you triggering it? Because I feel like there's 2 schools of thought on this, or at least in my mind, is when things are going good and you want to push your advantage, or things are going bad and you need extra actions to handle things. You know what I mean? Like
I think it's entirely dependent on board state. I think skipping the Mythos phase, well, and also player count, because skipping the Mythos phase in single player probably isn't worth it. But getting 3 extra actions in single player is super worth it. And then also, how is the board state looking? Are you flooded with enemies? Is the board relatively clear? Are you set up well or are you not? Like, it's super dependent. I think the overall... Like, you're always going to get value out of this card, but you're going to get more value based on your ability to read the state of the board.
I think the mental trap with big bombs like this is that you kind of get in the thought, especially with a card like this, or maybe one of the really limited ammo weapons that you finally threw down. You're just going to sit there and think to yourself, like, oh, there's going to be a time. There's going to be a time for this. My time will come. And it's not always that apparent, I don't think.
No.
I guess I'm in the school of you wait until you know you're gonna press your advantage. I'm in the keep tempo, press tempo school. But if you happen to have a moment leading up to that where you're like, okay, well, we could use some extra actions to dig ourselves out of where we are right now, then yeah, go for it. But I feel like if you hold out too long for that moment you're behind, you will have paid 8 XP for this card and use it maybe half the time.
You know, there's a lot of us here that play RPGs, and I think there's this pitfall that I totally fall into it, where you finish the game and you realize you still have like 200 healing potions.
Yeah.
You were saving for quote unquote
what if I
that
need
fight.
'em?
Yeah, exactly, right? And
It's
Sean,
rainy
I'm
day
totally on
syndrome.
with you, like, yeah, right. Like, and I feel this way, the same way I feel about not Diana Stanley, who prays to God because he wears a collar. He, like his power with the whole Elder Sign tentacle flipping thing. Again, people have discussed it. Like, do you wait until that big test to make sure you can have it, or do you just take that advantage when you can to keep tempo? And I am totally the tempo guy. I'm like, you know what? If you're kind of early to mid game, you've got the Golden Pocket Watch out, you're decently set up. Like, you have a couple tools out, and you could just really get ahead by skipping a Mythos phase or having another investigation phase. I think that helps you avoid getting into trouble in the future. So rather than use this reactively, I feel like you use it preemptively to avoid getting into a shitty situation.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Dan was nice enough to link in Discord here that this phenomenon already has a name. It's tattoo. This thing is too awesome to use. Too awesome to use.
Yes.
Although I was happy when I played Final Fantasy Legend on the Game Boy back in the day that I saved the nuclear bomb for God at the end. Which is a very Final Fantasy sentence to say. But it's a tough one. I feel like I go back and forth on this one, and it might depend on scenario. The Boundary Beyond example, like, that one is more where I feel like I benefit more from saving it for the moment I need it. Just because that scenario squeezes you so tight that you need that thing that's going to give you breathing room. And I feel like pressing the advantage when there's no enemies on the board in that scenario is not as useful as triggering this when you get that Mythos phase when you just get slammed with enemies. So yeah.
And I think
that scenario that oh geez.
Nick.
Go Nick.
Oh, is the fourth scenario kind of like the natural choke point in every campaign? Because it's Essex County, it's Boundary Beyond. What is it
It's the Asylum.
It's the Asylum. Yeah, it kind of is, isn't it? Like, that's scenario 4 is when, like, that's the one you kind of have to plan for. So
The core set doesn't even have a fourth scenario. That's how choked you get.
I would argue that Devour is, like, basically scenario 4. Like, Devour is crazy.
It's 3
spike.
and 4.
Yeah. But yeah, like, that's essentially when you kind of want your deck firing on all cylinders by that point. Like, you kind of want to have your staples. So, by like scenario 3-ish, or at least going into 4, because that does seem to be like the real, it's not that it's the halfway point, but that's where the difficulty seems to spike up, at least in the only 3 campaigns we have. So we'll see if it holds true with Wages of Sin. I mean, the difficulty sure spiked with Secret Name, but
So yeah, we'll see. I guess one last concrete thing I'll throw out is specific timing points that I think about for Gold Pocket Watch are before an agenda advances, because usually nasty stuff comes out, or before we're gonna, like, the same investigator phase, we're gonna advance the act, because then that tends to bring out new stuff to do, and then you can really press, like, you're basically might even be able to blow through like 2 acts before the agenda can even like fight back on you. So those are like 2 points I think about.
So, returning to just general rogue bombs. So we have the Pocket Watch. Trying to see what else.
We have the mini pocket watch, Ace in the Hole. Kind of.
The Pocket Watch. Typewriter?
I think that's one that you build your deck around, isn't it? Like, that's one that you plan to get from the outset, because it's so action, like it's good, but it's better with actions, you know what I mean?
Right.
So unless you're building a deck that's capitalizing on that, I don't think you would spend the 4 experience for Typewriter.
Sure. God, I'm trying to think what...
And then there's All In.
All In.
All In is fun.
All In is very fun.
I love it.
Can we count
Borrowed
Double or
Time?
Nothing as a bomb card that no one has to bother spending experience on?
No, because you don't upgrade into it. You just take it.
I kind of consider the Lucky Dice a bomb because it's 2, but it's exceptional, so it's actually a 4 XP card.
How about the Obel? Like, I know it functions differently from a lot of the cards that we're talking about, but that's a big decision to make, to add that to your deck, and it has a big effect on your campaign going forward. For better or worse.
I'd never take it in a blind run.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely not. It facilitates bomb cards.
I took it for skids in solo TFA.
You took it for who?
And for skid. Oh, god damn it! I took it for the not Diana Stanley who has higher willpower.
Guys,
I'm too proud to be angry.
In solo TFA for him, like scenario 2, and then scenario 3 he died, and I was like, god damn it. So yeah, Obel it changes the way you play.
Other than that, though, like, I guess maybe Hot Streak if that's your thing, if resources are your thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough.
And now with Hot Streak 2, it's an easier jump. Like, you don't have to do it all 4 in one. So
See, I love it when that is a thing that we need to talk about, because that didn't really exist a whole lot in the early game. And it happens a decent amount now, where there's some big card that I'm looking
There's
for.
2 levels.
Yeah, where there's a stair step.
Yeah, like shrivel. What all does it? Shriveling, Hot Streak,
right.
Yep, Rite of Seeking.
Rite of Seeking. Yep. I can't think of any others.
Yeah, I'll come back to that.
Right.
I guess it's a lot of mystic spells, so maybe that's why I'm sensitive to it.
Oh yeah, BD says ward.
Yeah, ward kind of.
generally
2 and
people
5
ignore
kind of
them.
do different things.
But those are, you take them for different reasons. Yeah.
But you could still stair step up, so valid.
Right. I think
if you're
there's
going-
more room to explore,
Especially
for
with
those.
arcane research, too.
Oh yeah.
Like, stair-stepping with ward, yeah. But
Yeah, that's an interesting the couple permanent deck building modifiers that we've gotten. That's an interesting addition to the whole upgrade scheme nowadays too, is particularly when you're looking at Mystic Bombs. But we'll get there when we get there, I suppose.
Yeah, I think.
is that time now?
I was gonna say, what other rogue? Is there anything
don't
in rogue
see
that
why
we
not.
haven't
I
discussed?
just say my last rogue point is just I think you're never. Well, I won't say never. There may be times when you get like tons of XP at the end, but usually you're not going to be able to buy all the bombs in rogue you want because there's so many. So even more so than a lot of classes, it's basically picking a certain path. Are you action hungry? Are you getting these big like luck mitigation things like lucky dice? Are you going cheat death to try to avoid death? So just settling on that. But mostly rogue is just like you get those key efficiency cards first, and then you start thinking about bombs.
The good thing, too, about cheat death, and it is kind of a bomb, too. I mean, it's got the XP of a bomb, is you don't actually just have to decide when to play it. Like, it lines it out. But,
Yeah.
Sean, Mystics.
Well, what can we say? What I will say is that I feel like more than any other class, just all over the board with strategy for Mystics per investigator. And like some Mystics, just because they can bend so flexibly around using willpower, like even within the same investigator, there could be 2 or 3 different schemes. That said, some of the more common bombs that I tend to see more often, upgrading Shriveling to 3 is pretty common for those investigators that have 4 willpower. I would say I don't go to 5 very often, personally. Just because they're...
I don't either because
I
of
don't
that 2 horror.
2 horror can really hurt.
Well, and 3 is just like 3 does it. You know what I mean? Like, it gets you there. So there's very few times that I'm like, God, I wish it was just a little better. Like, normally I'm like, I just wish I had more charges on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just think the ask gets a little too high for 1 extra damage. Like, if that sucker dealt 4 per charge, I'd be on board. But right now, I think the only investigator who can really bear the, bear the burden is the not Diana Stanley, who shoots things with her minds when she gets stressed out.
Sure.
Presuming she's running
she's got
Peter.
Pete Sylvester,
Yeah.
And she could also have keepsakes as well. Like, Survivor offers a lot of really good horror soaks for not Diana Stanley, who is better than Diana Stanley.
Wait, you're gonna have to narrow that down, Scott.
Sorry.
I'm not rising.
Not
to
Diana
this weight.
Stanley, 9 volts. Yep.
I mean, this is the rule. We're just following it.
Funny you should mention Shriveling 5, because I made this list and I didn't put it on there because I feel like XP, yeah, it's a bomb, but I don't think it's actually a bomb card.
Right.
And I was playing a game with Alex, who suggested this topic, and he upgraded into Shriveling 5. And I was like, dude, like, I really don't like it. It does 2 horror. And he's like, yeah, it'll be fine. He killed him. Like, all 4 shots, he took 2 horror.
Yeah, that'll
So-
do it. That'll do it.
And he was playing not Diana Stanley, but can be stressed out and shoot mind bullets. So,
Damn.
yeah. Would you consider grotesque statue a bomb?
I was thinking about that because I saw it on your list.
It's like right on the bomb cusp, isn't it? Like it's a decent amount of XP, and it has a decent effect, but I wouldn't quite call it like a big splashy bomb effect.
I think it feels less like a bomb now because we have so many other ways to control what comes out of the Chaos Bag. Whereas I think in Dunwich, it was like a bomb, and like that was a big get for certain Mystic investigators. So, but now like there's like 6 or 8 or 10 like Mystic cards. No, there's more than that even. I think that in some way manipulate the tokens you pull out of the bag. So,
Yeah, you get Dark Prophecy, Premonition, All of McBride.
I mean, Premonition's a bomb card, you know what I mean? But it's a 0
Yeah.
XP. Like, it's so, like, that's the Mystic auto-include, I think.
Yeah.
In high count multiplayer, I would count Rite of Seeking level 4 as a bomb card, because you will actually get use out of that in high count multiplayer.
Agreed
3 clues per charge is a hell of a thing.
I can't believe we haven't talked about the bomb card in Mystic yet, which is it could be either of them. I like Seal of the Seventh Sign, personally, but it could also be Seal the Elder Sign, or whatever the skill card is that...
Yeah, Seal.
It's Mateo again.
Who, sorry?
Oh, god damn it. The not Diana Stanley is better than Diana Stanley.
No, not
actually,
acceptable.
for him, I don't agree with that. My own statement.
I'd say back it up.
No, Seal of the Seventh Sign to me feels like such a bomb Mystic card because it does the one thing that we all were thinking would never happen. Like we all thought, like you can seal anything, but there's never going to be anything that touches the tentacle token because there's so many cards that are like, even if you draw the tentacle, this effect doesn't work. And then lo and behold, we get a 5 experience Mystic spell with 7 charges. That's just like, nope, get rid of that tentacle, and it'll probably sit out of the bag for a few turns. So.
Not as long as you'd like, though, man. Oh.
No.
Yeah.
Especially in 4-player, where those little minions are running around just drawing all the bad stuff tokens. It's like, guys, stop! I just played it. I just cleaned up
However,
in here.
I take this as soon as possible in Akachi every time.
I mean, it's great. If you can get Spirit Speaker down and recur this, it's
Exactly.
It's good for so many reasons.
Yep.
So Seal of the Seventh Sign, the tentacle stealing one, early upgrade, late upgrade, and then also, do you play it early game and just enjoy the, slightly stress-free couple rounds, or do you wait till near the end of the game where you need to be passing tests?
I tend to get it like we talked about earlier how like scenario 4 is when you want your deck firing. So I tend to get this after my deck is already doing what it needs to do. I tend to get it around scenario 5-ish. I think in TFA I got it right after Heart of the Elders, I think. And then when I play it, I tend to play it more mid-game. Like once I usually my goal is to get Rite of Seeking and Shriveling in hand early, so those are my utility spells, and then pretty much once one of those runs out, if I have Seal in hand and I don't have a replacement, or if I'm sitting good on enemies, I'll slap Seal down and just enjoy its extended stay. So mid-campaign, mid-game essentially,
because it could fall in the same, that what do they call it, tattoo, the too awesome to use, where if you play it too late,
where you're like, oh, it's not the right moment yet.
You might only get 2 rounds out of it, and like only 2 charges fall off, and you're like, wow, I could play that a lot earlier, and had it stick around much longer and been,
I'd say at 4 cost, I just play it when I can.
Yeah, I don't sit on it. Yeah.
And then Seal, I know we've already talked about Seal of the Elder Sign, but I feel like that one is not itself a bomb, but it helps bombs. Like this is Double or Nothing Storm of Spirits. Throw this down and everyone feels safe, Yeah.
It's a bomb enabler.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a fuse.
You beat me to it.
It's a blasting cap, yeah.
Oh, damn it.
That's better.
That is better. That's way more current. We need to get out of our cartoon world.
It's an Acme crate. Anyway. That's a good card.
So then, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, there was. Well, now I can't remember which one I was going to bring up. I'm looking through the Mystics real quick. You go with your point.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that taking bombs in Mystic it depends on your investigator more so than most other classes, I think. Like, for instance, it's not out yet, but Deny Existence level 5. That is a great card for anyone.
Yeah.
But I feel like, the Diana Stanley that is Diana Stanley looks at that really hard earlier than anyone else.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or, for
I would
instance,
see that.
actual Diana Stanley looks at Ward of Protection 5 a little bit harder than anyone else because she can actually get multiple uses out of it, and that becomes a much better card.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't know. Deny 5 seems good enough that I think anybody is going to want one of in their deck. And I think...
I agree.
I think the actual Diana Stanley is just more likely to go for 2, and like you said earlier. But I think that's a one of in pretty much every Mystic, just because it's so it turns everything around. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
Yeah, and we were talking about tempo earlier. What a tempo swing, right?
My God, it's
when it's a zero-sum game, when it says lose cards and you gain it instead. Mm-hmm. Not only you're canceling the effect, you're getting a bonus. It's propelling you forward. Yeah. It's a tempo win.
You fool! You've discharged my secret weapon! Like in an anime. I'm sure that's happened sometime. Alright, so then moving to the class that just doesn't really have any bombs.
Yeah, it's nothing on my list when I did greater than 3 XP.
So I guess... So I tried to make a list for this, and I was like, well, they don't really have big bombs. They have a few good cards.
Sure.
And 3 XP good cards, but I wouldn't call them necessarily bombs. Will to Survive is a pretty good card.
I'd say that's Survivor bomb.
Yeah, that's the closest that I consider a bomb for Survivor, I think.
Alter Fate, maybe? Fast. Maybe? What does that do? I have to remind myself what it does.
Discards a card that's not not attached to an elite enemy.
Oh.
It's good. I don't know if I'd call it a bomb.
Yeah.
No, that's...
Will to Survive is probably the closest they have.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking about it, and I'm positing a thought that they don't really have... Sorry, that their exiles are their bombs.
Sure.
And essentially, you look at something like Deny 5, or Deny Existence level 5. Would you get something similar value out of Test of Will buying it 5 times? And would you get, Stroke of Luck buying it multiple times? Was that the idea behind Survivors? And do we need to look at exile cards as the bombs that you just basically pay incrementally for, right? Because I can get a Test of Will way quicker than I can get Deny Existence level 5.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I only got 2 experience. Okay, well, I have 2 Test of Wills. Great, right? And then that'll propel me in the next scenario to do better, because now I can cancel stuff, so maybe I'll get more XP. And the value of the exile cards are bombs, but they're spread out like butter over bread, or whatever that...
Bread.
What's the Hobbit quote?
Over too much bread?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Butter scraped over too much bread? Yeah.
That's what I was going for.
I think, and I think that's just Survivor's whole MO is to do more with less. That's just what they're about. So, I mean, I'm looking at, they don't have anything higher than 3 experience. And in there we have things like, we already talked about Alter Fate. There's Infighting. There's Old Hunting Rifle. There's, there's what is this shit? What are they doing? There's Rabbit's Foot, which
it's just
is
like
good.
watching a Survivor play.
Exactly. Are we even playing the same game?
Yeah, I just think it's one of those things where you have your level 0 Survivor set up, and it better be solid, and then the XP cards are just kind of augmenting it, but they're not...
Right.
They're not giving you those... But I think I do agree with Scott that exiles is kind of similar, just in the sense that you can have that similar conversation about when do you trigger those exiles. Are you holding on to them? Are you just blowing them? Like in any situation that is possible to. That's kind of where I lean. Like I just like test a will. Oh, that one sucks. I'm using it. Like because XP, it's not like it's really too in demand when I'm playing Survivor. So yeah, I just tend to use the exiles when I can.
You know what's really funny, Ian, is I think I'm the same way. Or sorry, I'm the opposite way. Where we were talking about too awesome to use. Mm-hmm. I think exile scares me more than it should. Like I'll sit on an exile card longer than I should just because I'm like, oh, do I want to pay the XP? Yeah, you probably do, because that's what you paid the XP for the first time, was to actually use it. Right. Take the action figures out of the packaging.
I think as far as when to use them, test a will. I use it like you, Ian. Mm-hmm. Like when does it suck? Now, okay, whatever. It's 1 XP. That helps as well. Stroke of Luck, I find I save to the end game.
Sure, yeah.
Like that's my okay, I need to dodge this enemy or I die. Mm-hmm. And Stroke of Luck is one that I am willing to have hoarded throughout the game and not used, and I am okay with that, because that means I was doing so well I didn't need it. And I'm okay having those 200 health potions, because you know what? Time may come that I need those 200 health potions in one skill test.
Yeah, agreed. And sometimes I kind of play like a 1-in-1 strategy. Like if I have 2, like one of my Stroke of Lucks is like, I have no shot in hell in passing this investigate. Let me use it for that. But I'm holding on to this other one for that key thing at the end.
Yeah.
And similar for Test of Will. Like I'll use this on any stupid treachery, but this other one I'm holding on for that one treachery that I know will just destroy me.
Dan in our chat, I love this quote: "Survivor for those who are both selfish and ineffective." Oh, that's
I think we
funny.
need to start our motivational poster series back up.
Yeah.
I wanted just a shout out too for one of the cards spoiled in one of the FFG ones, the Guiding Spirit. That we're seeing more exile cards, so it's continuing. Hooray! So.
Also, that one's
really good.
Did we
think it was gonna? Yeah. Do we think it was gonna stop? I didn't think it was gonna stop.
I think some people were like, "Oh, are we still getting it after that?" I don't know.
It's like their central. One other thing too with these exile cards, and maybe the bombs in general that we haven't mentioned, is like keeping in mind the scenarios that hit your hand hard. Like if there's lots of treacheries that are causing you to discard stuff from your hand, and you don't have like stellar willpower, then you might as well just play the thing, because you're probably going to lose it.
All right.
Neutrals.
Neutral bombs.
So, the big one. How soon
improvisation?
do you... Yep, that's the one. How soon do you upgrade into Moment of Respite? Just kidding. Key of Ease.
I mean, if we live in a world where you play that card pretty soon and pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my Iron Man deck, and going into Iron Man, I was using the Not Diana Stanley that puts things in the graveyard, including ghouls. My upgrade path, the first 2 upgrades were Key of Ease, because I figured of all the investigators, he could probably use it the best. Even though it is fantastic in everyone.
Yeah.
If it
this
ever
A+
went away.
card.
Yeah. But if it ever went away, he can bring it back. Like, not very difficultly. So, for him, I just went, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to use and abuse it, because it's Iron Man, and screw you, Matt. So, do you go early? If you're going to play it, is this the first upgrade, or is that too many eggs in one basket?
I took it, the one time that I took it in a campaign was I took it late with Ursula, because I literally got to a point like, I have everything else.
How can I hold all these XPs?
Yeah, she's good. I guess I'll make her better. You know what I mean? Like, she just didn't, like, and that was it.
Yeah.
So
it's hard to answer because I don't use it that much. It's just, I feel like a lot of us are in that boat of, like, self banning it, but the one who I did use it in was the not Diana Stanley, who dies a lot, Calvin. And that was like, let me get this early because I'm gonna need it. But yeah.
Yeah, I would say if you're in a situation where you want it, like, there's no reason you shouldn't take it early, because it does what it does as soon as you play it, so why not get it?
It wins games.
Yeah.
Time Worn Brand.
Mm-hmm.
This one feels like an early buy for me. If this is what you're going to be using as a main-ish weapon, because you have so many opportunities to use its special max 1 per game text.
Agree.
Yeah, this is early buy.
It's the kind of weapon that you plan for. Like, it's one that you're either going, this investigator's going to take Time Worn Brand, or you just don't think about it. So yeah, you tend to get it early.
And speaking of a Time Worn Brand as another bomb, like, don't be afraid to use that second ability. That just use it, because the times where you will actually kill an elite enemy and draw the cards are just so few and far between.
Just use it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the I talked about this with the not Diana Stanley, who carries a cross. Well, that doesn't narrow it down. Who carries a burning cross, Zoe? Because one of the things I like that you can take it early with Guardians is because then you can take Prepared for the Worst as like a second copy, basically, so you don't have to necessarily worry about blowing 10 XP to get 2 copies of it right off the bat.
Trying to think.
Yeah, and it's Sean. I was just gonna say I totally agree with your. Use it early, like the second ability. Totally a tempo thing, right? You take out that big elite enemy. 1, you're taking off the enemy. 2, you're drawing those cards.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's 3 XP, but one I kind of consider a bomb neutral is Ornate Bow, just because of the effect it has on the investigators who can take it. And I tend to take that one very early because the people who want it need it early.
Yep.
Yeah. It fills a very specific gap for investigators. That's one that you're planning for.
There are very few other cards that do what it does.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not a bomb, but charisma, like in a specific build, or even like just playing Dunwich, that tends to be a pretty early buy for me.
I feel like it's similar to the Seal of the Elder Sign. It's not a bomb, it's a bomb enabler.
Sure.
And not that the allies are bombs, but when you have 3 allies out, you become a bomb. Because there's so many great allies, and putting certain combinations together with certain investigators, like, it's building the bomb.
So, going off of that, Red Glove Man.
Yes.
How often, like, the only time I ever take Red Glove Man is either, like, it's a charisma build, or my janky ass Roland Calling in Favors build. Fucking A. My janky ass. I'm done with this.
That's exactly the type of worn down resignation I was hoping to hit.
Not Diana Stanley, who I already used up the Has Higher Will. Not Diana Stanley, who can actually kill shit. Roland.
All right. Let's keep it civil.
I have a janky-ass build with him called the Lead Investigator that focuses on, like, janking clues around and calling in favors, art students, and stuff like that. Like, then I'll go for Red Glove Man, because he just fits that archetype. But otherwise, I don't look at him too seriously, even though he's really good.
I think he's a super specific build.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned. Like, calling in favors, and... a chance encounter? What's the one with
the Chance Encounter? Yep, that's a great one too.
Water? Yeah.
But I think it's because he takes up that ally slot, and generally, for most investigators, that slot's being filled by your staple. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you don't really have room to play him. So
I used to be really, really hot on RGM, and I think there are still really specific builds, as you guys have mentioned, that can take him. I don't think he's a general purpose card very often.
No.
If you've got charisma, or I guess your Duke or whatever, if you happen to have an ally slot just hanging around sometimes because you're cycling through other allies, Or if you're an investigator that just needs specific help with a stat, but generally only needs it like once or twice per game, then this could be useful. But all that said, most investigators have better cards to spend 5 experience on.
Right.
Dan mentions he's got a lot of soak, so he'd be almost as a dodge against the big bad.
Oh yeah, that was actually
Sure.
one of the big reasons that I ended up being so positive on him. Because the stat boosts are cool, but then you look at that 4/4 and you're like, oh well, that's like two big attacks of opportunity that now I can just take. Those are free actions to me now that I don't have to worry about enemy attacks. So,
and if you can combine this in a rogue with like Ace in the Hole or
Pocket Watch,
Golden Pocket Watch, or what's the spell that Borrowed Time? Like you can make Red Glove Man more worth it.
oh boy,
So,
oh boy.
I
Well,
think-
I'll be building a Red Glove Man deck after we wrap tonight.
I think one of his biggest strengths, or at least what kind of elevates him above, a lot of other situations, is the fact that he doesn't discard till the end of the Mythos phase. So to me, that's like, unless you're Mystic, when you play him, you're usually doing will and then whatever other stat you need immediately. You know what I mean? Because he'll hang around as long as you don't kill him. He'll hang around until you draw your encounter card. And if you have will of 2 or 3, he really helps supplement that. He's giving you a big boost in that. So
Or you can just be like, oh, I drew Rotting Remains. He still has all his sanity left. Like, I just won't bother committing anything. Who cares? Like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of nuance in playing him that's not apparent when you just look at the card, but
yeah, I think part of it is just because he does require charisma, like we're saying, kind of. But now that you mention that, Nick, now I'm thinking about my beloved low will investigators who get saddled with like 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 treacheries in their threat area that test will at the end of their turn. All of a sudden, I might give Red Glove Man another look, because all of a sudden you might be able to clear all those tests, and that is worth it to me.
yeah.
In addition to everything else you do.
Yeah, I ran a 49 experience, not Diana Stanley, who uses blue and yellow, Roland. I ran a 49 experience version of him through standalone Depths of Yoth, and I think every time I played Red Glove Man, I was like, will and agility. And then it was like, and it was literally like, then I was good, because I could handle the stuff I normally had to, find a trick for. So...
well, now I'm all hot on Red Glove Man.
I know.
But I do agree that 5 experience is a big jump. Like, that's a big ask, and that's not something that every investigator is going to be like, perfect, like, there's my 5 XP buy. So,
Trying to think of any other neutral cards. I mean, sometimes I'll upgrade quiches later on.
I rarely do, actually. It seems
But
like
they're
every
bombs,
every
right?
class
Like
has a
Yeah, no, they're not
well,
bombs.
yeah, and every class has a better. I think for the most part has a better answer for resources.
I think in general that's true, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that gets us through. Scott,
Yes.
where else are we going on this upgrading adventure?
Oh, geez. Well, we have by role. So the 4 roles that Nick put out here: Killer, Clover, Support, and I guess Solo. Solo is just kind of, you're doing everything.
Because you're all of it,
Yeah. Killer, I think, is pretty self-explanatory.
You prioritize things that kill and things that help you survive so that you can continue to kill.
Clover?
What are the bomb gets for Clover? Rite of Seeking,
Yeah.
Sure.
and that's
Is
it.
deduction level 2?
Yeah, deduction.
It's 2.
Yeah.
Deciphered reality.
Deciphered reality, yeah.
Oh yeah. Decipher reality, definitely. And then in some situations, eventually 6th Sense level 4 would probably be a bomb. But I think that's a little more. I think that's a narrower spectrum than like right.
Do support builds have bombs?
That is an oxymoron.
That I think, yeah, that's a tough one.
Like, would Ward 5 be considered a bomb?
Possibly.
Yeah, maybe. Narcotic Manuscript, Network 57 brought up in chat. I think that's kind of close, but again, that's one that's like a great, standalone card and not necessarily one for a campaign, unless you're building for it.
I would say the Seal of the Seventh Sign is supporty. The bag control.
They're
thing.
perfect.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
And Golden Pocket Watch, actually.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah?
That's a...
God, I'm just trying to think of other support cards, and they're all like in the 2 to 3 experience range. So I don't know.
Yeah, most of them fit there, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, too, there's a lot of support cards in Seeker, and like we discovered, Seeker just has a lot of really good 1, 2, 3 experience cards. Just little efficiencies here and there make just an all-around, more than the sum of its parts, right?
Right.
Ideally.
Are there any big solo bombs?
Stick to the plan.
Yeah, giving you the consistency for sure.
It's huge in solo, It's
Yeah.
huge.
You have
Dynamite
no one
Blast?
else to lean on when you're...
I don't see... Okay, so I'm running solo Carolyn, and I've looked at upgraded Dynamite Blast, and I'm usually like, no, I'm okay taking the 3. Like, even though she has low health, I usually have a guard dog or a beat cop or whatever out. Like, I don't know if 2 experience to ignore the damage is... Wait, is that what it does, or does it... I already forget, because I never use level 2 Dynamite.
Level 2 reduces the cost by 1, and it doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity.
Oh, that's what it is. Gotcha. Maybe. I mean, it's literally a bomb.
Well, I mean, that's kind of why I asked.
Yeah. BD mentions in the chat, too, Lola Santiago. I would consider her a bomb in solo.
Yep, I would
Because
agree.
Yeah.
it's a fast, testless clue every turn as long as you can keep your economy
she's
up.
just freaking
And
insane.
that is bonkers.
Yeah.
The permanent talents obviously goes without saying, just for consistency. I'm trying to think of the ones we talked about.
What about borrowed time? We didn't talk about that at all.
I've
for
heard
Rogue.
stories.
Do you not like it?
I'm fine with the idea of it.
I actually really like it.
Go on.
Well, I used it for one game. Not in solo. I was playing 2-player. Actually, my wife used it. I convinced her to buy it, and then convinced her to play it, and then talked her through how to play it. And then she was actually like, yeah, this is really cool. Because it's like, wow. And the only reason why we actually got it to really trigger is because she played, is it Ace in the Hole that gives you 3 extra actions? Yeah, she played Ace in the Hole and then dropped Borrowed Time and threw those extra actions onto Borrowed Time immediately. So it had 3 actions on it from the word go. So I guess dream setup.
Speaking of Ace in the Hole, that's actually a solo bomb that I like quite a bit. Like, doubling actions in solo is huge.
I mean, Ace in the Hole is essentially the Golden Pocket Watch in solo.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like, it's, if you're gonna read or double the investigator phase. And borrowed time kind of just, you can skip a turn to use a Golden Pocket Watch next turn, kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Oh, yeah.
I think Ace in the Hole is like the golden minute hand.
I'll allow it.
Thanks. Sweet. Put a little hash mark next to my name there.
Oh, yeah.
The not Golden Pocket Watch that does what Pocket Watch does, but with poker cards.
Jeez.
Well, all right.
Right.
So, I mean, just I suppose any other comments on where the game's at in general for upgrading versus where it was? Any big changes that you guys had mentioned that we haven't already talked about?
There's
the
a
most
lot more
part-
builds.
Yeah, for the most part, unless you're playing specific investigators like Carolyn or
Who?
like,
Sorry?
God damn it, I'm not doing this anymore. Like
It's the rule, Nick.
the not Diana who's named Carolyn.
God.
Unless you're playing like her, or I don't know who else would be. Norman? No, because he can take any mystic.
Not
I
Diana
don't
Stanley
know.
with the beard.
Unless you're playing like Carolyn. For the most part, the upgrade path is pretty diverse now. A lot more than it was the first time we did this episode, which was back, or this topic, which was back on episode 17. So, yeah, I think we're in a great place.
And it was actually something that, like, looking back on it, it should have been a very obvious conclusion to make or thing to see. But when we're talking about staples a few episodes ago, and we were on Dr. Milan and how prevalent and ridiculous he is, Nick, you said something about the RPG nature of the game, where you're like, yeah, well, everyone takes Milan, but if you think about an RPG, which is kind of what this game is based on, your early game builds do look a lot alike. And it's in your upgrades and what, build and kind of growth you take that really starts to differentiate characters. And I feel like we've really gotten to a point where that's coming through. Like, I can take the same level 0 deck through 3 different campaigns and end up very different on the other side.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
I think one of the big things that's changed for me, too, I don't know about you guys, is because the level 0 card pool is expanded, too, that some of those XP choices become difficult, where it's like, I actually like my array of level 0 cards I have going, and I've bought those key XP cards. Like, sometimes I don't even want to take out some of these level 0 cards to put in an XP card, and it makes it tough. And that's where, like, that teching for scenarios comes in for me sometimes, where it's like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I really need to leverage it, and I really don't want this, oh, this is a cool effect. I want, like, this is the cool effect that's going to specifically help me defeat this scenario.
Excellent. Well, stay tuned for episode 76, where we will revisit upgrading again. So from here, let's... we don't have any hotline items, so I will mention to everyone. It's been a while since we've gotten a call from you guys. We'd like to hear from you.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, comments, complaints about our opinions, feel free to call the Mythos Busters hotline at 203-493-6984. We'd be happy to play your message online and then talk about you while you can't reply.
And if you go to our Facebook page on your phone and you just hit the call button, it calls that number.
That's right. We've eliminated like 3 steps just for you.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's move it into some tentacle time. Scott, what has been grabbing you?
Well, okay, so I was thinking of doing this, and I was like unsure, whatever, but I'm just gonna go out and do it.
Yeah.
So, over the last few months, I've made some substantial changes to my life, as far as like health and stuff. And we talked about this at Arkham Nights, actually. And I told you guys I was tired of being fat and out of shape and just not taking care of myself physically. So I've made a bunch of changes, just eating and, not sitting on the couch all the time. And you know what I want to do starting tomorrow, because tomorrow's April 1st and it's a Monday, and all my apps that track like calories and stuff start on Monday. So I'm going hardcore starting now, and I want anyone out there who wants to chat about, I don't want to call it fitness, but like
wellness.
I just want wellness. Yeah. I think I want to make a channel in the Discord, and please mute it if you're not into it. And I'm not about like bodybuilding. Like, I'm just trying to be less fat. And anyone else out there who wants to be less fat with me, feel free to join. So yeah, physical training. Like, thanks, Casey. Most of physical training.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. Add me as a friend on MyFitnessPal.
Yeah.
I'll judge you for your late night snacking, and you can do the same.
Well, I use the app Lose It or something.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, but so if we want to, as a community, pick an app like MyFitnessPal or Lose It or whatever, and have like a little Mythos Busters community
accountability buddy channel,
or accountability buddy. There you go. Yeah, that'd be perfect. Yeah. So
sounds like a teddy bear you'd buy in the 80s.
Came with a tape deck.
Right.
And now that I've said this, now that I've said this like out in the air, now I have to do it. Like it's holding me even more accountable. So
This
perfect.
episode will mysteriously never release to our RSS.
Don't worry, guys. I'll edit this one.
Well, good for you, man. That's it's not
Yeah.
easy to do to correct bad habits. They truly do die hard.
Yeah, and it's been years too, right? Like it's just slowly over years, just not putting in effort, and I'm not trying to make a big fast change. I'm just, like there's people who do like crash dieting or something like that. Like the diet or the kind of the exercise diet thing I'm following is eat less food, you fat ass, and get the fuck out. Like
Solid.
I want to know what that
It's this really-
that acronym works out to be now.
Good. So yeah, it's and the whole idea behind it, as far as I'm concerned, is just changing my lifestyle just a little bit at a time, so that it's manageable for years. Right, like this will follow me for decades.
Yeah.
It's not intermittent fasting. It's not keto and all these things. If it works for you, great. I just know I won't follow those
Right.
until I'm 60.
Yeah.
So
So on that point, Scott, this is actually something that I've been trying to add into my life, year by year, piece by piece as well.
CrossFit.
No, I'm not into CrossFit. I mean, I've done CrossFit, but
I mean, yeah, like once a year.
once a year. It's on a lark.
yeah,
Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Body is a very interesting book. I don't necessarily know that everything he's got in there is 100% right. His diet that he proposes in there works, but basically it's just a collection of kind of body tricks is essentially what I would describe it as. He calls it like the hacker's guide to the body. That might be a little very smart for me, but definitely worth a read. And I still use individual tricks that I picked up reading that book in my daily life to my benefit. So 4-Hour Body, check it out.
do I have to do all 4 hours at once, or what's?
Can I do 20 minutes today?
If you have to ask that question, Scott, you're not ready for the change.
All right.
No, but seriously though, if you're like really doing some stuff and you want to like run at Arkham Nights or like get out and be active, like I know I can't even get you to go to a freaking bar at Arkham Nights, but
I fucking hate running so much.
I did too.
Even
I
when
did
I was
too.
like super fit. No, I can't. I hate it. I hate it. I cannot run.
See,
You know,
I used to run 5 miles a day every single day for 3 years. I hated every frickin' mile
okay.
of it. Yeah.
See, I have never really liked running, but I have learned to fall in love with having run.
but the process of getting there is so bad.
Yes.
Like I ran 5Ks for years. I think I had a 6-year span where I ran at least 2 5Ks a year. And I just did it because it was like, okay, because I knew people who did it, and I knew people who, that's another thing is like I knew people who were really into it and really loved it. So then I was like, they really enjoy it. I like hanging out with them. I'm going to do it. And then I met my wife running a 5K, and since then, neither of us ran a 5K because we got the end goal, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Run a 5K in bed.
More like 3.
God. What am I, a
be
superhuman?
Well, cool. Ian, what's been grabbing you?
Well, before I get into my thing, I'll say I'll join you. I'll definitely join you for that, Scott, because I've been thinking more and more about, like, especially I'm getting older, like my being out of shape leads to more and more physical ailments, and like I think a motivating factor for me is I don't like having one kid and another on the way. I don't want to be like their dad who's all like laid up with ailments all the time. I want to be able to be like as active as I should be. So yeah, it's something I've definitely thought about. And fortunately, running is off the map for me because I totally messed up my knee, tore a ligament playing soccer way back in the day. And so yeah, but there's lots of other alternatives to do.
Like any other cardio. Yeah.
Any other cardio.
Hate running. Sorry.
I'm okay with running. Just my whole philosophy is that when you're done, you should be somewhere else. Like you shouldn't.
I liked it as part
on
of
a treadmill.
something like playing soccer. That's like 80% running, and that
Right.
was fun.
Oh,
but,
sure.
Yeah. That's fine.
That's the thing is
But
like
the
if you can being active is easy. If you can trick your brain into focusing on something else and you just run as a result, that's fine. It's when you are running to run that your brain just goes, I don't wanna.
What are we doing? So other than that, pretty much the same old for me, except for my long journey of, I don't even know how long it's been since I started the Dark Tower. I've made it to the tower at last and finished the Dark Tower series. Ka has been fulfilled, and I'm super happy to have finished it. I don't really know what to say, because there may be more discussions amongst us in the future Dark Tower related, and I don't want to spoil for people who haven't read it. But it's definitely a big commitment to read a series that's like 7 books long and not small books. But I don't regret it at all. Like, you guys really talked it up at the beginning before I had started, and it did not disappoint me. I'll say that for sure.
It's really good, right?
Yeah.
And really fucking weird and really good.
It's like that perfect blend of familiar and bizarre. Like it really hits both of those like in such a way that is so satisfying to me as like the kind of stories that I like to consume and the ones that really intrigue me. Like there's enough about it that's like, this makes sense and this fits what my brain is expecting, combined with like, what the hell? Like suddenly there's bird people? Like what?
It's such an interesting blending of genres too. And each book has a different feel to it, and like leans more heavily, like, you know, it starts out as kind of, okay, this is like a western with some fantasy, and then another book is more like apocalyptic Mad Max style almost, and another is I don't even know how to describe it, but like
another's like Doctor Who, like
that's a good way to
between time and
describe it.
space.
Yeah, exactly.
Super dark coming of age story.
So just the way it all weaves together, like, there's maybe individual things I could nitpick here and there, but that's generally not something I'm that interested in. I'm more interested in looking how the whole comes together. And really, I think one of the best things you can say about a work is, like, I can't really think of anything that's like it. Like, you can see the influences obviously, but as a whole it's kind of its own thing. It's on its own. I don't think there's another work that you can say is like the Dark Tower as a whole.
I agree, Ian.
I was gonna say, is he roboting for everyone else too?
Yes.
Now the listeners won't hear it because Ian's recording his own track, but that was just like 30 seconds of pure garble, and I'm sad because I really wanted to hear it.
Well, now I don't know whether to repeat it, but
no, I don't think you do. We got the end of it, which on the whole you really enjoyed the Dark Tower. So now I'll have something to listen to the episode for.
So Ian, there you go. Ian, real quick. So now we know that with the Dark Tower, all of us have read it now, except Scott chose to end where Stephen King claims, which I still argue is incorrect, claims the real ending is.
He's the author of the book.
If that were true, Scott, he wouldn't have written the stuff after it. That's my argument. Like if he really
explains that.
No. That's bullshit. That's him pandering to the audience. If he really felt that was the true ending, he wouldn't have written the rest of it.
He said he was pandering to you. Explanation.
Okay. Anyway, my point is, Ian, you read that. You said, "I see why Scott stopped," and then you read the rest of it. Just answer this, yes or no. Does that epilogue, or whatever he calls it, does that recontextualize the entire series?
Oh, yeah, big time, for sure.
Yes, okay.
Like just in a couple lines. It's insane.
Yeah, like literally like in like 3 pages. It's boom.
And it adds very, very interesting potential energy to the movie that the movie ultimately fell flat on its face with, but yeah. Yeah.
The movie was a wet fart that vaguely sounded like Dark Tower.
Like, no, I don't even know what I was going to say.
That was a slightly moist fart, but yes, I agree.
I think that, like I said, I could see why Scott stopped, but I think it's cool that actually, I don't know how to phrase this without spoiling it.
It's literally like you think. Go ahead.
The warning he gives and the things he says of why you can stop also play into and are contextualized by what comes after in a cool way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it all works together in this very meta way that's not up its own ass, which is good.
Right. Like, you think about that, like, the series itself, and, like, how can you end that series in a way that's satisfying? And not only did he do that, but he fucking knocked it out of the park. Like, not only did he make it satisfying, he made it like, that is it. Like, that's what the story is all about. Yeah. So,
and of course,
we've talked this up to Scott for like 2.5 years now. And he's never going to want to do it now.
Be like, fuck this.
Too much is riding on it now.
So, for those who don't know, I've read the Dark Tower series 3 times, but I haven't read it in about 8 years, I think is the last time I read it. And all 3 times I stopped at this point where King says, you can stop here, but there's more if you want. And I vowed to Sean the next time I read it, I would read it and I would read the ending, and I would be like, as I'm reading the last few pages, I would get on Discord or Skype or whatever, so we could immediately talk about the ending. So I am going to go to full gear and I'm going to read these books so that we can do like a Mythos Busters special side episode on Dark Tower. And I think the intro, we need to start recording the second I'm done reading.
Yes. Yeah.
The special ending.
So, I'm also going to say this. Now, Scott, while I poke at you for following King's advice in that part, I am also of a similar mindset in that I have not read The Wind in the Keyhole, and I have no desire to read The Wind in the Keyhole because the Dark Tower, because the Dark Tower is such a complete, like, it's literally complete in the way that I read it, and that when an 8th book came out, I was like, why?
Well,
why?
Nick, did you miss that there's also a 9th book?
I did.
Okay.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Wait, there's
I haven't read those.
There's a 9th book?
I haven't read. Yeah.
What is it?
I haven't read those either. One sec, I'll find it.
Is it just the Roland side story?
Yes.
The witches of whatever?
Oh.
Maybe?
Anyway.
Yeah.
What I will say about Wind Through the Keyhole is it's not distracting from the regular series at all. What happens within the context of the original series is they sit down at a campfire, essentially, and Roland's telling them a story. And that story is the actual book.
So it's another Wizard in Glass, essentially.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And
only it goes one level deeper
not having
because it's Roland telling a story about himself in a younger day, and then younger Roland also meets up with a kid to whom he tells a story, and that story within the story is actually the bulk of the book. So it's
yeah. See, I'm sure it's great, and I'm not saying that it's like, oh, it's probably trash. It's just that I just don't see it's not relevant to what I like about the Dark Tower.
It's a very good story. It's not something you need to enjoy the series.
Right.
Yeah, I've been looking at it because I have it, but I just, now that I've gone through this whole 7-book series, I kind of have a similar feeling to Nick, and I also am like, now I'm suddenly free to read all these other books. Do I really want to delve into this now? And to that note, if any listeners out there want to send me good sci-fi or fantasy recommendations of what I should read next.
His Dark Materials.
Oh, that first book is so bad.
No, it's not bad. It's just boring.
That's why I didn't get through it.
I have read the first of his Dark Materials, but I have not continued.
Okay, great. Then you get to skip right to the better part.
I bought the trilogy, and I got halfway through the first book, and I'm like, this is just...
Well, and
there's nothing here.
The first book in particular starts really slowly, and you appreciate it more when you see the rest of the world when it blows up in the second book. And by blows up, I mean just, like, expands. It doesn't actually detonate.
No, I know. It didn't grab... I don't even know where that is anymore, that trilogy that I bought of them. It's somewhere, but oh, man.
Yeah, someone in chat saying Lovecraft Country. That has been on my list to read, so I might take a look at that too.
Oh, that's a book? I did not know the series was being adapted from a book. That's cool. I knew nothing about it. Where the hell are we? Nick.
What the fuck have I been doing? Mainly RPG stuff. So, since, rehearsals have been picking up for A Few Good Men, I have since stepped down from running games for Miris, our online D&D massive West Marches campaign. We have a new DM who's kind of stepping into the role as well. He stepped in, like, the week after I had to step back. And he'll be there. I think he's planning to just DM until he doesn't want to anymore. So that takes a lot of pressure off of the the other DMs in my absence. And I'm still kind of poking my head into the Discord and giving my input and stuff when I can, but otherwise it's largely on the back burner. What I have been doing is I kind of put our Lord of the Rings campaign on a bit of a fast track to make sure that we can resolve that before we get too deep into the really busy summer months. So we're doing like a couple of back-to-back weeks here and there where we can. And then also I've been working on a universal custom system because I haven't really been... I like Savage Worlds, but I haven't been happy with how it's made the jump from sci-fi to fantasy and how it's kind of emulated the fantasy that we want to get out of a Lord of the Rings game. And I know a lot of people are like, why aren't you using One Ring? Why aren't you using these other Lord of the Rings games? And it was because I wanted to have a campaign that I just had to worry about how to create the campaign itself and not have to learn a whole new system. That's why I chose Savage Worlds. But anyway, I'm not happy with how Savage Worlds has adapted overall, so I decided to take the easy way out and create my own system from whole cloth.
I think we're going to have to discuss
way.
the definition of the word easy.
Well, you know, I my job is such that I have a couple days a week where I have an hour or more of time that my attention isn't immediate. And I can't really access a lot of my normal work stuff, like my writing and all that, from my work computers when I'm in the office. So I end up, but I can access Roll20. So I'm just like, okay, I'll just start building the system in Roll20. And then, you know, doing that every other weekend for, 4 months has now turned into I have the bones of a system that can be tested. And we tested it this last weekend and got a lot of good feedback from it. So,
nice.
And the campaign that we're going to be running is set in the setting of my space fantasy science fiction books, which I've also picked back up and finished writing book 4, and now we'll be editing and revising it. So, really excited
based on
to
the
get
outcome
that
of the RPG, because you're using that to get past your writer's block.
No,
I'm pretty sure I've seen movies with that plot line.
Right. No, so that's pretty much what I've been doing is working like most of my I've been playing Apex Legends, I guess, which is fun. And The Witness is free for PS Plus this month or last month. No, this month. This is the last day. So I picked up The Witness, and that's really fun. But yeah, RPG stuff and writing, revising, and editing. That's pretty much me.
I've pretty much been Arkham and video games for the past little while. I've been awash in Bloodborne again because, God, like every time I try to, like, finish with big rabbit ear quotes, the game, it just digs its hooks in a little bit deeper. So, Nick, you ran me through my first one, and it was kind of a cool expedited experience. I got to see the lore because you'd like sit and explain shit to me afterward. So I started up a second game after that because I'm like, all right, I need to just prove to myself that I can beat this game without Nick holding my hand the whole way. But and I was planning out the character like, all right, so I'm probably never going to play this game again. So let's just plan out like the weapons that I absolutely want to try. Let's just make a character that can do that. And as I wrapped up the DLC for this character, I was already planning my next build. For the next time I actually had to uninstall Bloodborne from my PS4 just so I'm not tempted, because the second part of my technical time is I picked up Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, which is the next game from the same studio. And I'm all up on Bloodborne, and I soloed a bunch of really hard fights. I've gotten pretty good for someone who is just not, this is not a part of my normal game consumption, this type of game. So I'm getting into Sekiro, and I'm like, oh yeah, so I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'll speed through the opening areas because I'm just fresh off of Bloodborne. This type of game is in my veins right now, and I have just been getting pummeled and crushed, and Like, I'm starting to come out of it, but I've gotten to the point, there's just this one run up to a boss that I just can't seem to get, and I was just started to have an actively bad time with it. I've had to turn it off a couple times just because it's like, I don't understand what the game's trying to teach me here. So yeah, playing it like you're playing Bloodborne is a mistake, because in Bloodborne is like, hey, this enemy's about to hit you, dodge at the right time, and you're going to be just fine. Doesn't matter. Just dodge. Just dodge. And then Sekiro's like, oh, there's a sword there. Why are you dodging? Here, take damage. That's it. So anyway, I hope to report back on the next episode. My whole point in bringing this up is I hope to report back saying that I finally busted through whatever mental block is stopping me from being good at this game, and we'll have progressed. Because the game is gorgeous. The world is cool. The combat system, though ridiculously relentless, is very fun. But yeah, so
also the combat system, when you're playing the game the way it wants you to play it, the combat system is incredibly stylish and cinematic. Like, it looks amazing. It doesn't look like, at least in my opinion, it doesn't look like an avatar that you're hitting buttons for and everything. Like, when you play the game the way it intends for you to do it, like, it looks like one of the best choreographed fight scenes ever.
Because it's all blocks and parries and swipes.
Yeah.
And like side steps, and like the footwork is all really nice, and it's like, if you're into kind of the Legend of the Five Rings Jade Empire aesthetic, where it's really heavily inspired by the Sengoku area, but there's heavy dark fantasy elements. It's very, very cool, and I hope to actually see some of it in the future. Anyway, that's my tentacle time. I'm also playing God of War, but that's like the one game that's not screwing up the other two, so it's not worth mentioning. All right. Well, we're running a little long here, so let's wrap this sucker up. As always, find us on our email, check our YouTube, Twitch. When's our next Twitch night? I think our next Twitch night is next week, the 2nd. Hopefully Brandon will be able to come back and we'll get Dunwich underway, because I'm about to take a brash newbie through Essex County Express the first time, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Choo choo, motherfucker.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us for episode 57 of Mythos Busters. We'll see y'all next time. Bye.
How funny that episode 17 was the last time we talked about upgrading, and it was also the episode where we all went nuts for Thbbtower.
Totally was.
Nice.
And now
Everything
episode
serves the beam, guys.
57.
It is
Everything serves the beam.
It is. It's true.
It only would have been better if our first one had been episode 19.